Okay guys, welcome back to another episode of Rotten Reviews. On this episode I take a look at the 2018 film Upgrade. It has an 87% certified fresh on the tomato meter and an 87% on the audience score. Well, is it rotten? I would say it's not rotten, so I'm not doing this as a review to argue against the score and say that it should be rotten. In fact, I don't think it's rotten. I think it should be just a little bit out of the rotten range. I would say a fair score on the audience meter would be closer to a 65%, making it not rotten, but not exactly stellar either. The reason I'm doing this review is because I went into this movie watching it for the purpose of doing a rotten review. And the reason for that is that I hadn't heard of this movie before, so I assumed because of the what must have been rather minor or ineffective marketing that this would have been a B movie or something that would have been rotten. Well, I watched it and then I was pleasantly surprised that it was better than I thought it would have been. And in fact, I think it had some big flaws, but these big flaws are still not enough to bring the film into rotten territory. And in particular, one aspect of this film saves it from being rotten, and that is it not only has a twist ending that you can see coming from a mile away. In fact, very early on in the film, I could see where this twist ending was going to come in. However, it has a double twist ending that follows up right after that. That isn't as easy to see, and I think saves this from becoming a rotten film. And if it hadn't been for that double twist at the end, yes, this would have and should have probably been a rotten film. And I say that because the obvious flaw right from the start of this is that the filmography isn't that good, the cinematography, if you will. It's very dark, and I don't know why. It's not just a few indoor scenes are dark or some action scenes are dark. It is also very dark looking, even when people and characters are out driving around in the wide open bright daylight of the daytime. It is simply dark, and you're wondering why does it have the look of a film that was shot during the day, where they shoot things during the daytime and then put a filter on it to make it look like it's night. Well, this film kind of has that look to it, even though it's not being done like that. They are driving around during the day, and it still looks dark outside, and the whole movie is a little bit like that. Even in rooms in which there are a lot of lights and it should be bright, it looks dark and dim, and a lot of stuff is seen in silhouette and in shadow, and it doesn't look like it's an attempt to cover up bad CGI or whatnot. It's just like some weird stylistic choice, or actually, if this were a movie that I shot, I would think, I simply set up the cameras wrong or filmed it with the wrong equipment. And I call that a flaw because it was just too off-putting. Why is this movie so dark? Okay, so then that's the first flaw I found. And then, the actual plot itself, I could see the first twist coming from a mile away. It was obvious that the bad guy was this client of the main character. But the double twist, of course, came after that. So, yes, it was kind of very much obvious what was going on, but that little double twist at the end actually pulled it out of being completely rotten for that. It had other flaws, and I'll mention those as we get into the audience reviews. Now, I'm going to make a note that this 87% fresh popcorn bucket score here, it only has 5,349 audience reviews, very low number, and I think very few people have seen this because, again, it wasn't marketed very well. I hadn't heard of this until it was actually already out on a pay-per-view basis. I had never seen this in the theaters, so maybe it didn't have a wide theatrical release. I don't know, but in any case, you can see that here in the small number of audience ratings. And jumping into those audience ratings, we have one from just 6 days ago, making this relevant. 5 stars. My favorite movie of this year. It came out. Underrated. Maybe because I didn't see the twist coming as soon as other people did and avoided trailers. Maybe you avoided trailers because you simply didn't see any of the trailers. I certainly didn't know about those trailers. Now, in any case, I'll disagree with the 5 stars. I'll give this 2.5 stars. If I thought this was worth 3 stars, I wouldn't even be doing this. But I think 2.5 stars because it feels a little bit low budget, especially being too dark at times. And some of the ways that the sets were portrayed, like the character when he goes to his client who turns out to be the bad guy's living in this elaborate underground house that a rich bad guy would live in, except that the way they set this up is kind of a cheap way. You can tell they don't have a good budget, so they made the entrance to it obscured by walking down some steps that you never quite see where the steps go, and then you're in this underground house. You can tell that it's because of a very low budget that they had to do things this way. And a lot of the sets are like inside warehouses and whatnot, and you don't have a good sense of where those warehouses really are in relation to each other. And you could tell, even in the car chase sequence, you can tell that they didn't have much of a budget. They couldn't do a whole lot with it. They did some, tricks with the cameras to make the car chase more exciting. But again, you could tell the low budget was there. That's why I wouldn't give this 3 stars. It may have had effort, but I say 2.5 stars. Underrated. Obviously not. Obviously, it's overrated. Look at that 87% audience score. I say it's actually a bit overrated. I'm saying that it's fair to have a 65% audience score. But let's continue on. November 28th of 2019, 4.5 stars. This was some unexpected fun in a genre bender film. Really refreshing look at something that could be real in the near future, artificial intelligence, some choppy writing, and a few curious acting choices and a clear low budget give this a bit of a B-movie feel, but it works. This is one of those films that you'll want to go in knowing as little as possible because it's easy to spoil. Afterwards, you'll want to have a discussion about it. Final score, 8.7 out of 10. Well, first off the bat, I'm going to say that I'll spoil this because I really can't do a rotten review without assuming that you've already seen it or you just don't care about being spoiled. So I'm going to spoil it if you haven't seen it, if you don't realize. The first twist ending is that the client, the rich client that the protagonist works with at the beginning, turns out to be the bad guy that set him up all along, that had his wife killed, that had him paralyzed. And I could see this coming from, a million miles away just a few minutes into the film. It was too obvious. It was also too obvious the way the bad guys deliberately killed his wife, but then only deliberately paralyzed him. That was a little too convenient, and it was shown in an obvious way, so very obvious. The twist ending after that, the double twist, if you will, is that this bad guy, this rich tech giant or tech guru that's a client of the protagonist, he is not actually the bad guy it's shown because he hasn't been controlling his company for a long time, for several years. He has been a slave to this AI creature that he developed, which has taken over his company and has been giving him orders for a long time. So he's actually a victim of this AI too. And in fact, at the end, this whole movie kind of turns into a big bad AI type menace movie in which, it's like basically Skynet when Skynet was winning, an artificial intelligence was plotting to take over the world, or in this movie, the artificial intelligence was basically plotting to make itself human or put itself into a human body, but basically in a plot to take everything over, to make a new type of a new technological order, as it were. There are some human bad guys, some cybernetically enhanced human bad guys that are also pawns in this game. But the double twist, I just gave it away. The bad guy turns out to actually be a slave to AI that he created earlier. It's effective. It gives you a theme at the end that perhaps, the theme might simply be humans are machines and they're incapable of running themselves, so they need to be controlled by a more advanced machine. And that is the theme of this movie. Humans are machines, like soulless machines, and they need to be controlled by a better AI than the humans themselves. That's basically the message of this thing. So it does have a theme. It doesn't completely fail. It's not completely rotten. I just think it has a lot of flaws. It doesn't need to be 87% on the audience score. It's just got too many flaws for that. But let's continue. Yet another 3.5 or 4.5 star review. Wasn't expecting this film to be so good. Well, neither was I, but I still say 2.5 stars. 4 stars. Ex Machina, told differently and on a budget. I haven't actually seen Ex Machina, so I can't comment on that. 4.5 stars. Absolutely brilliant. Great new direction by Leigh Whannell. 4 stars. Really liked this movie, even if it isn't anything new, just great fun, action, and scenography. I'll say no, it's not great fun or action, but the double twist and what's really going on is a little bit new, and this movie's worth seeing one time, so it's not rotten, but it's not 4 stars. There's no big, intense action scenes. There's no seat of the pants, chases or whatnot. Very little of that. In fact, this main character who becomes enhanced with this AI. There's a little bit of action combat going on there, but nothing over the top, nothing needing a lot of CGI. It's basically just some old-fashioned combat, nothing spectacular. So if you're looking for some action, adventure, spectacle, this isn't the movie for you. This is very much like a low-budget affair, but it's worth it. I mean, it's got a message and it delivers its message. You may or may not agree with it. It may be a film in which some people are left with a little bit of something to think about. But again, we've been left with this same type of thing with the Terminator and with older stuff like the Forbin Project from the 60s, etc. So it's nothing new, but it's worth seeing one time. I just don't agree with all these 4 and 5 star reviews. That's why I'm doing this. 3.5 stars, pretty intense and depressing at times, but there is some solid physical comedy here portrayed by the lead. Worth a watch. Oh, and by the way, there's no happy ending here. This is like a kind of AI, hostile AI type movie with a message that also has a bad ending for the protagonist and for humans in general. So, it's not like one of those movies you're going to walk out of and you're going to pump your fist in the air and have a good day after that. It is kind of depressing at the end. But let's move on. Another 4-star review, October 31st, 2019. Good sci-fi flick, which has become a rare commodity nowadays. Yeah, I would say it's still a good sci-fi flick. That is a rare commodity nowadays. It has been for quite a while, but again, not 4 stars. 5 stars, fun action and satisfying violence make for a great movie. The twist was hinted slightly and was actually very surprising the first time watching it. The style is very nice and the cinematography is engaging. I say no, the cinematography, it's flawed. It's a little too dark. Now, I don't know if that's what happens when you don't have the budget. I don't know enough about camera, lighting, and film, etc. to speak on that. But no, this is just a bad flaw. It's too dark. The film is too dark right from the start, and it's not done in a way that it's like trying to give you a mood. It just comes across as being a flaw, because even in the bright of the day, it looks dark. This comes across more of a technical problem to me than an artistic choice. 3 stars. Love the concept of the movie and the twists, but felt character development was lacking. Well, yeah, the bad guy, or the guy that turns out to not exactly be the bad guy, the rich tech guru type guy, he's still not a good guy. He's not maybe the ultimate bad guy of the film, but he's more of like an asshole-ish, weak type rich person. He's not fleshed out real well. You're just like, the movie's almost kind of painting him like other movies painted characters like that, and hoping that your mind will fill in the backstory of how he might have become that way. So yeah, they're not fleshed out that real. And the cop that's pursuing the case, that's trying to, figure out what's going on, she's not really fleshed out either. She's just kind of a stereotypical cop character. Nobody's really fleshed out. Even the main character's relationship with his mother, this relationship's quite featured. Running time-wise, this relationship's quite a bit in the plot. The protagonist has a relationship with his mom, but it's very superficial and there's no point to it. It doesn't make anything happen in the plot. Yeah, the protagonist and his mom, the protagonist has a mom, but we all have moms. That's basically all you get from it. There's not really a point to it. 4 stars. I just had a great badass time with Upgrade. The film's gory blood splatter of originality had me repeating, I've never seen anything like this. This film is exactly what it wants to be, and you can't help to just sit back and enjoy this wonderful kick-ass ride. Logan Marshall Green gives perfect physical and emotional performance that matches the character given perfectly. Incredible score like something out of Blade Runner. Classic old school special effect makeup and sculpting and fight scenes. Okay, well, I largely disagree with all of that, but I'll agree with one part. It is trying to give you a little bit of a Blade Runner type vibe. In the choice of the futuristic vehicle that is shown. And you know what the funny part is? It's set in the future, but they only really show you one futuristic vehicle, one type of self-driving futuristic car that's featured in this, mixed in with otherwise what would be normal modern cars. It's trying to like give you the Blade Runner type look, but it just doesn't have the budget to do it, so they're doing the best they can with the budget. I'll give them credit for that. That's why I give it 2.5 stars, but it just can't get 3 stars because they needed to find budget somewhere. If they had, this could have hit 3 stars. Just didn't have that budget to work with, but they're trying to do the Blade Runner thing, but just no money to do it. 4.5 stars. Good twist on classic revenge flick. No, 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 no. Yeah, the protagonist wants to kind of avenge his wife. There's a little bit of that, but there's not enough of it to call this a revenge flick. It's more like, it's more like a revenge flick, and then it's like derailed into a Blade Runner cyberpunk type of thing. There's way too much cyberpunk themed stuff going on to just make it a straight up revenge flick. So no, I disagree. It isn't a revenge flick. 5 stars. Original idea, great movie. Couldn't guess what was going to happen. Yeah, you could guess the first twist, but not the ultimate one. That was a little bit, I didn't see that coming. You probably could have seen it coming. I mean, the main character was just so easy to turn himself over to this AI. Everything was very convenient for him to do so. I could see that where somebody with a little more thought could have pieced that together. But yeah, if it hadn't had the ultimate double twist at the end, this would have been rotten. 4 stars. Great action sequences with good background story. Humorous at times, definitely violent. Interesting take on the potentials of technology. Yeah, it's got the cyberpunk stuff going on. Cyberpunk type sci-fi has been good at this for a long time. Again, this didn't have the budget to really do that justice, but it took all its ideas from the cyberpunk genre. 5 stars, exceptional action scenes, great story and world, and with a twist that left me dumbfounded. There's not much to the world. Again, the budget doesn't allow it. It's just our world with some cyberpunk stuff thrown in, and then you have to kind of use your imagination to say that it's in the, you know, kind of, I don't know, 20-year, 30-year out future to us. Otherwise, no, it's not like great world building or anything. 4 stars. Upgrade is unfortunately in the club of great movies that completely flew under the radar when first released. But that might actually work to its advantage, as this is definitely one of those movies where the less you know going in, the better. The only reason I was aware of Upgrade is because of writer-director Leigh Whannell, Saw, Insidious, and the fact I'd heard plenty of great things from friends who'd seen it. The film takes the all-too-familiar premise of a man looking to avenge the murder. Yeah, okay. The director's done other things, Saw and Insidious. I would say Insidious is a lot better, and Saw was a lot better. But this isn't bad. It's not rotten. Don't believe these reviewers and say it's just a revenge flick. No, that's like kind of the inciting motivation of the character, but it's not actually themed as a revenge flick. It doesn't fit into that mold. Let's move on. 4.5 stars. 9.5 out of 10 for me. It was nearly sci-fi perfection. True, it wasn't that original, recycling a lot from The Matrix, Ex Machina, and shows like Black Mirror, but I thought it executed those ideas maybe better than any of those. Amazingly dark, inventive ride. Well, I'll agree it's a little dark. Literally a little too dark in places. In fact, in most all of the film, it's too dark. So what was going on with that, I don't know. 3 stars. My technologically challenged view and review of Upgrade. It doesn't matter where you are in the cinemaphile spectrum of movies. I think everyone has to admit that Saw has had one hell of an impact in the world of cinema, so much so that it has built a resurgence of low-budget horror movies and brought it right back to the mainstream. James Wan went on to do the Insidious series, which is, my opinion, tends to be hit and miss, while Leigh Whannell has come out with Upgrade. You know, you can't compare this to the look of Saw. Saw wasn't too dark. I mean, I'm not talking about the tone. I'm talking about the actual aesthetic look of the lighting and whatnot. Saw was less dark than this movie, and this is not a horror movie. So again, that just reminds me that what was going on with how dark this film was. It doesn't add up. 1.5 stars. Too dark of an ending. Yeah, it was a very unpleasant, it was a bad ending, unhappy ending, if you will. It's an ending that made sense. There was nothing flawed about it. It just was not an uplifting ending. It wasn't going to like make you feel better when you left the theater, but it gave you a little something to think about. 4.5 stars. Great 80s style action movie with the exception of the hacker who tries to force identity politics garbage into it. Yeah, that was a little weird. At one point, the protagonist goes to visit a hacker to kind of turn off the networking feature of the AI that's been installed into his body so he can get control of it again, presumably. And this hacker kind of does some weird dialogue telling the protagonist while the hacker is working not to assume their identity or assume their gender. There's some definite weird gender politics lines in there. I'm not sure why. They don't go anywhere in the story, or they're not precipitated by anything in the story. So that was a little weird. And then the other thing I should mention about the hacker part was a little cliched, and it was a flaw in the movie too. They should have actually talked to somebody a little bit more, got a little bit more consultation on the hacker stuff, because at one point in the hacker doing their hacking work, they were shown just issuing the Linux shutdown command to shut off presumably the networking functionality of the AI installed in the main character's body. While somebody that doesn't know anything about computers wouldn't notice that. They might think that's some cool technical jargon, but just having sudo shutdown -h now as a line in there to be prominently displayed on the screen is a little bit of a joke in itself. I mean, it's like saying, well, he's got Linux in his body. Come on now. I think that's more of a flaw than any type of sense of humor they put in there. It's just like they cheaped out on the hacker part of this. And then that gender politics line, that was a little weird. And I wasn't going to bring that up, and I had forgotten about it until this reviewer said something. So I thank that reviewer. 4 stars, a well-told story, sharp humor, and a solid backstory of the main character. I was surprised by my positive reaction to this film due to the spontaneous camera motions of the character that made you feel like you were also attached to the robotic limb. Very enjoyable and has a good story, rating 4 out of 5. Yes, that's a good point. It's a positive of the movie. It could have been cheesy, but it came off really well. The actor playing the protagonist, after he had been upgraded with the AI and he was able to walk again, he kind of walked a little bit robotically, like somebody that couldn't actually feel his limbs but could control them accurately. And that was done well. It worked. It wasn't too cheesy. It wasn't too ridiculous, but it was just subtle enough to be believable. And that's probably realistic. I mean, if you could, by force of your will through some computer chip, animate your body to make it operate normally, but you actually couldn't feel, with that tactile response, what it felt like to do that as a regular human can. You just did it through your mind and a chip. Then no matter how well you did that with your mind and the computer link, you don't have that sense of feel. So it would probably be just so slightly awkward a little bit, and without a lot of time to practice it. So they did that very well, and that was a cool part of a thought that went into this when he could walk again with the AI. I appreciated that, and it was risky, I guess, because that could have come across really cheesy and robotic, but it didn't. It actually worked well. So again, I thank the reviewer for bringing that positive point up. We're in September 27th of 2019, so a fairly recent review. 3.5 stars, bleak, funny, nerdy gore. Yeah, it was not all that for 3.5 stars. The gore wasn't too much. I mean, there was enough gore to convince you people were getting hurt really bad, but not enough to be a scene out of Saw, to be a horror movie. I didn't think the gore was all that much. I noticed people are talking about that in the reviews, but actually the gore didn't even stand out to me as being off or odd or anything. 4.5 stars, a well-directed, interesting story brought to life with witty writing, bold action, and technological prowess. Upgrade brings the future to your living room with scenes that you won't soon forget. Well, again, too many stars, and some of the, where the protagonist would snap back upright, because he had this AI in him. Yes, it's humanly possible to move like that if you push the body to its maximum potential. You know, you push all your muscles to its maximum because it's getting the signal from, you know, an electrical current instead of from your mind. But there's a limitation to the human body too. You could probably only do that so many times without damaging yourself and your muscles, and where your muscles are actually attached to your skeleton, the ligaments and etc. Yes, this is possible. They didn't show anything that was outside the realm of human possibility, but to carry on like this for any length of time, I think it would have done serious damage to the human body. But the running time and the time that actually passed in the story, it wasn't that much time that he was doing stuff like this in the combat and whatnot. So it's passable, and like it hit my mind while I was watching it, but it wasn't enough to make the movie rotten or to throw me out of the believability. But it borderlined on it. It really did, on the powers that this AI was able to bestow upon the protagonist. It was borderline, just hitting the border of that realistic line, you know. So it skirted it, but it didn't cross it. 4 stars. Definitely not the ending I expected. Really fun to watch. Yeah, I didn't see the double twist. I saw the first one, but not that little second twist at the end, which kind of made it into an unhappy ending. Let's continue. 4.5 stars. This movie was freaking awesome. If I could describe this movie, I would say it's Blade Runner meets 2001: A Space Odyssey meets Venom. You know, I'll stop there. It is reminiscent of Venom. It's like Blade Runner and Venom, or Terminator and Venom. It's definitely similar to Venom in aesthetic. Even the main protagonist, he looks a little bit like Tom Hardy in Venom. So that's quite deliberate, I think. These came out about the same time, I'm thinking. It takes place in a gritty, lived-in cyberpunk universe. It is about the dangers of artificial intelligence, and one of the central characters is the main character's alter ego. However, unlike Venom, Upgrade takes it all the way with all the violence and cursing that you'd want out of a mature rated action science fiction film. There's no cutting away from people's head. Yeah, I guess Venom was like, it wasn't completely R-rated, and this was. I don't recall the rating on Venom, but I know I've heard that said before that Venom could have had more gore, and it didn't. So I'll largely agree on that. It did remind me of Venom in a lot of it. The look of it mostly, not the story. But, you know, Venom kind of, the character of Venom upgraded Tom Hardy in Venom, and this is technology upgrading, so there's a similarity there, but the rest of it is not similar. 5 stories. Waited so long to finally see this movie, and it was worth it. Story is great, soundtrack adds suspense at the right time, and the action was too good. One of my favorite films of all time. Well, I wouldn't give it all that, but it's watchable. 3 stars. It's like Venom, but upgraded. This is Leigh Whannell's second movie he directed, and it's pretty solid. Cheesy and poorly written, but enjoyable with some cool practical effects. Logan Marshall Green, in spite of his uncanny replica to Tom Hardy, was pretty good, especially with his reaction to tense situations, made it even more entertaining. So I guess people are like bringing up this thing with Venom. I guess I could just like say that this is like a budget Venom. Is this a budget Venom? Putting aside the AI parts and the revenge plot and etc., is this budget Venom? I'm going to consider that as I finish these reviews. 5 stars, September 7th, 2019. Must watch. Hero fights like a robot, ultimate fights. 4 stars. Upgrade is one of those films where if you like your sci-fi action films, it'd be difficult to come out the other side not having had a great time. Yes, it's pretty smart and makes use of some timely potential problems that feel like they could be just around the corner, even if it isn't interested in delving too deep into them. And it has a great central performance from Logan Marshall Green, but it's the combination of superb atmosphere arising from well-chosen sets and lovely cinematography. Again, the cinematography, I think that was a flaw, again, because of the budget. It was too dark. Sci-fi action, there's a little bit of both, but again, the budget isn't there. I'm not saying this is rotten again, but not 4 stars. Your 4 and 5 star reviews are just like, they're too easy to please. I'm sorry. 5 stars, again, August 27th. Oddly excellent, excellent effects, top-notch action, and a good story with twists. Highly enjoyable sci-fi action splatter. Okay, but again, not 5 stars. You're too easy to please. 3.5 stars. I hadn't even heard of this movie until I was watching a video on YouTube, and it said that this was the best action movie of 2018. While I don't completely agree with that statement, I will say it's a really good movie, and I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, the marketing wasn't there, probably why the budget wasn't there. A lot of people hadn't heard of this. I hadn't heard of it. And I'm not sure if I heard of this on YouTube or not. It could have been. I'm probably not the only one. Like I said, there's only 5,000 or so reviews of this on the audience meter, right? So yeah, I'd say the score on this movie might change a lot in the future, assuming Rotten Tomatoes is around in the future, because it needs about another 10,000 plus reviews to bring that score to a more accurate level. And I think we'll see the audience score dip when it does. But anyway, another 5-star review. I was shocked by the ending, never saw it coming. Great movie. 5 stars. Was surprised at how good this movie turned out to be. It has a lower budget feel, but is far better than most big budget movies. And it is sure to please sci-fi fans with its originality and unexpected ending. Totally deserves 5 stars. 4.5 stars. This movie was awesome. I was not expecting it to be so good. 5 stars. What a movie. Great story and full of twist. Amazing, great acting. Amazing fight scene. I was blown away. This is a must-see. 5 stars. The most underrated film of 2018. Yeah, I'm getting that from these reviews. 4 stars. An incredible story and idea in the first place. Makes a person think if humanity is truly doomed. Yeah, it does give you that impression at the end. It's almost like the ending of that old movie, The Forbin Project, when you realize that the AI has won and perhaps it deserved to win. It makes you think about it like that at the end. 5 stars. It was an interesting look at technology, cybernetics, and the future. Obviously low budget, but exciting, which is impressive for a sci-fi tech film. 3 stars. If only the script didn't treat the audience like children. Over obvious writing, poor lines, and bad explanations of plausible science. Yeah, now here somebody finally brings up another main problem I had with this. Some of the dialogue is a little bit too convenient and on the nose and designed just for the sake of getting other characters to know things they wouldn't otherwise have known to make the plot move forward. In particular, there's some conversations between the main protagonist and his mom that's only there deliberately. That conversation is there just so that the cop can hear it while she's got them both bugged from somewhere else. So it's just too obvious, and the dialogue is too conveniently spoken just for the sake of the cop to know something to get the plot to keep moving. And that was a big flaw with this. They should have done that better. That's not a problem with the budget. It can't be excused because of the low budget. That's a problem in the actual script, and it should have been fixed. It was just too obvious. But let's continue. 4 stars. A while back I watched Upgrade. This film was wild in so many ways. The action and gore, the story itself. I love a good sci-fi action flick, and this one is a hidden gem. And you know, I should leave it on that. This really is a hidden gem, and I think it's not hidden gem because there was some conspiracy to hide it from everybody, or that it's some genius plan from some movie studio. No, this was a hidden gem probably because it didn't have the marketing budget. And that's what just kept this out of the spotlight for so long. It is on streaming now, and I think it is showing up on maybe HBO or Cinemax or something as well. It has an 87% fresh on the tomato meter, so obviously the critics like it. I think that's still too high, though, and I think the audience score is going to come down when we get more than 5,000 odd user ratings. If we were to see 25,000 user ratings, I think we would have closer to a 60-65% fresh rating on this. Yeah, we just don't have enough audience ratings for this to be more accurate, I think. But I liked it overall. It's worth watching one time, and it is certainly not rotten. And I was surprised that it turned out to not be rotten. And I will see you again on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.